Well, Excel 2007 offers a brand new charting engine. It's really the first improvements to the charting engine in over a decade. Of course, that means that everything about creating charts is brand new. Let's start first with some basics on how to create charts. Go to File, Open, and we're in Lesson 3. Start with the Chart Refresher file. Okay, we have a data set here with 3 regions and 5 months going across. Now, the great undocumented trick that not many people know about is you need to leave that top left corner cell blank. Anytime that you have dates or numbers as headings along either the columns or rows of your chart, the top left cell should be blank. Select your data as it's selected here. Now, we could create a chart by going to the Insert ribbon, but in reality, all we have to do is hit Alt F1. That's all it takes, one keystroke, and we've created a chart, and it's a pretty good looking chart. Now, there's 73 different chart types in Excel. If you didn't happen to want this particular chart type, it's very easy to change. Let's go on to the second worksheet. This data set has a much different shape than the first data set. Hit Alt F1 and take a look at the chart that we get. Wow, with 100 different points along the horizontal axis, a column chart is not the right chart. While the chart is selected, we'll go to the Chart Tools Design ribbon and choose Change Chart Type. Here you'll see a list of the 73 different chart types available. With this much data, it makes a lot of sense to use a line chart, so choose one of the line charts in the line group and click OK. Very easy. To create a chart with Alt F1, choose Change Chart Type, and you're done. Now, one of my favorite tricks is how to add data to an existing chart. Throughout the course of this lesson, you'll be learning how to do all kinds of cool things with charts, including formatting. And once you have a chart created with data through last month, it would be great if you could just add new data for the new month. Let's go on to the next worksheet. We have a chart here with data from January through June. Say that a month is finished and we have a new data set. In cell H2, type July 2004. Just randomly fill in some numbers. Perhaps the East region sold 20 million. The Central region was up to 35 million. And the West region did 12 million. There's our new data set. Now click on the chart once to select the chart. You'll see a blue outline around the data that's represented in the chart. At each corner of that outline is a blue handle. To add new data to the chart, all we have to do is grab one of the right handles and drag out to the right to include the new July data. That's all there is to it. Incredibly simple. Now, if for some reason you needed to show a rolling 6 months, we can take months off the left-hand side by grabbing the blue handle on the left and dragging to the right. Before I knew this trick, I would start over every month creating a new chart from scratch and then would have to recreate all the formatting. By being able to just click and drag to include new data, you'll be able to create your monthly charts in a flash. Going on to the next worksheet. Sometimes your data set is not set up right for charting. In this case, we have labels in column A, but the information I want to chart is in column G. It's no problem. Select the data in column A from A4 to A8. Hold down the Control key and select the data in column G. Now we'll go to the Insert ribbon, open the Pie menu, and choose 2D Pie. You'll see that Excel used the labels from column A and the values from column G. Now, so far, we've been fairly lucky with the way that Excel creates our charts. Sometimes, though, Excel gets a little confused. Let's go on to the transposing sheet. This data set is unique. I happen to have exactly 4 states and exactly 4 age ranges. Those age ranges along the top are actually text, so I don't have to leave the top left corner cell blank in this case. Press Alt F1 to create a chart. Let's look at this chart. We have age ranges going along the bottom. Now, the default chart is what's called a clustered column chart. I want to change that chart type to a stacked column chart. That's the second icon. Click OK. Now, this chart is interesting. In the first stack, we see the number of people who are aged 0 to 4 in the 4 states. In the third stack, we see that California has more people aged 18 to 64 than any of the other states. But this may not be the message that you're trying to talk about. Perhaps you want this chart to be an analysis of ages by state. You'll notice in the Design ribbon there's an icon for Switch Row Column. Click that icon, and now we have states going along the horizontal axis and ages as the stack. In this case, we can begin to analyze the age breakout by state instead of the state breakout by age. Now, it's easy to click this button again and again and again until you see which one is the message that you're trying to promote. If Excel chooses the wrong type of chart, very easy to hit Switch Row Column. Now you'll notice that when we type Alt F1, we get a chart right on the worksheet. In previous versions of Excel, we could either create a chart on the worksheet or as its own chart sheet. Microsoft is trying to get away from that chart sheet concept, and so by default, all new charts are created right on the worksheet. It seems to be somewhat random where Excel puts the chart, generally in the center of your screen and generally about a quarter of the size of your screen. Very easy to move or resize the chart. To be safest, when you move the chart, you want to click on the border around the chart. Just click and drag. Now there are spots within this chart where you can click and successfully drag the chart. For example, if I click in the white space here and drag, I'll be able to move the chart. But 90% of the area in this chart is not clickable if you're trying to move the chart. So to be safe, click on the border in order to move the chart. If the chart's the wrong size for you, click on the border in one of the 8 resize handles and size appropriately. I find lots of times I need to create similar charts of the same data. It's very easy to copy a chart if you understand the one gotcha. You need to pretend like you're moving the chart. Click on the border and start to drag. After you've started to drag, hold down the Control key, and when you let go of the chart, you'll have an identical copy. I don't know why, but if you hold down the Control key before you click on the border, the copy doesn't work. It turns into a move. I'm sure it's a feature. I just haven't figured it out. Now you'll notice on the right-hand side of the ribbon, there's a button called Move Chart. You must wonder what the heck that button's for, because obviously it's very easy to move a chart around the current worksheet. That button is for moving a chart to a different worksheet. For example, if you're trying to build an executive dashboard and you've built charts on 7 backup sheets and you want to move them all to the summary sheet, you can use the Move Chart to do that. Make sure you have a chart selected. Click on Move Chart. Now we have an option to copy this chart as an object in another worksheet or the old legacy style where we can copy the chart to a brand new chart sheet is still available. If you click New Sheet and click OK, there it is, the old Excel 2003 style chart sheet. Okay, so that's it. Very easy to create charts. Remember Alt F1, select your data and type Alt F1, choose a new chart type, and then move or resize as necessary. I'll close this file. Let's go on to the next file and learn how we can format our charts. Use File, Open, and choose the formatting file. I have to tell you, Excel gives us more ways to format a chart than you can ever imagine. Some formatting choices are global, a couple of clicks and you formatted the chart. Other choices allow you to get very detailed and make very specific elements on the chart. On our first worksheet, choose the chart to select it. You'll notice that there are 3 tabs under Chart Tools in the ribbon. Let's go to the Design tab. The first new element that we have is the Charts Layout group. Depending on what type of chart you have selected, Microsoft provides 6 to 12 different professionally designed layouts. I'll open the Layouts gallery, and I have to admit I'm drawn to the histogram layout. That's the 3rd row center icon. The legend at Microsoft is that if they bought a book and it required more than 2 pages to explain how to do something, they tried to make it be a single click. And this one is perfect. The steps to create a histogram in Excel 2003 were horrible. The settings were buried very deep in the interface, and it's wonderful that now in one click on the Charts Layout Gallery, we can create a histogram. Let's go on to our second worksheet, Chart Style. Now again, I'll ask you to click on the chart to select it. And this time, let's take a look at the large gallery on the right side of the design ribbon called Chart Styles. Microsoft gives us the 6 accent colors in our current theme, plus a black and white theme, plus a monochrome theme, plus a multicolored theme. The thumbnails along the bottom row are all on a dark background, which is perfect if you're going to copy your chart to PowerPoint. Other than that, the themes go from simple on the top row to more stylized in the middle and 5th rows. You'll see that in this case, the bars have a bevel and sort of a 3D effect. If we choose a different style, something from the top row, the bars have a simple effect. I call those the one-click changes. They're global, they affect the whole chart. Basically open the gallery, choose one that looks good, and you're off to the races. Now the next level of detail happens on the Layout tab. The center groups on the Layout tab offer most of the charting elements that you can customize. And within each dropdown, Microsoft has added the most popular choices. The theory is that you can open the dropdown and choose from the popular choices and never have to touch the Format dialog box. Let's just do a quick tour of some of the popular settings. Our chart currently doesn't have a chart title. If we look under the chart title icon, you'll see that we have a choice of above chart, below chart, or a new choice that we never had before called Centered Overlay Title. This choice adds a title without shrinking the size of the plot area. Now, we get the very imaginative title of Chart Title. Perhaps Sales would be better there. An interesting thing, right after you add the chart title, you can just type the words, Sales, and hit Enter, and Excel will replace them. Later, after you've selected something else, and then come back to the title, it's best to select the characters and type a new title. You'll notice that by default, the legend is on the right-hand side of the chart. A lot of charting experts say that the legend should always be on the left or the top of the chart, so that way as your eye goes across the page, it sees the legend before it sees the data. If we open the legend dropdown to see what built-in choices we have, we can move the legend to the top, left, bottom, overlaid on the right, or overlaid on the left. Let's move it to the left. Our numbers happen to be in millions, so the numbers along the left axis, 5 million, 10 million, 15 million, frankly, it's wasting a lot of space for all those zeros. If we go to the Axes dropdown, we'll have to choose Primary Vertical Axis, and now we have options to show the axis in thousands, millions, or billions. Now, I have to point out that these are the most popular choices. If we would actually go into the Format dialog box, there are options for trillions, but Microsoft decided that that wasn't one of the top options, so it's not here in this dropdown. Now, we're wasting less space with the zeros. You'll also notice that Microsoft added the tag millions at the top edge of the axis. Grid lines. Right now we have the default grid lines. If we go into the grid lines option and choose primary horizontal grid lines, you'll see that currently major grid lines is selected. If you would like more grid lines than this, choose major and minor grid lines. Or if you'd like to get rid of the grid lines, go to grid lines, primary horizontal grid lines, and choose none. Well, I think you get the idea. That's just a sampling of all the built-in choices. I've added a second worksheet here with an identical chart. Go to the Elements tab. If you'd like to pause the user interface, you're more than welcome to experiment with all the other settings on the Layout tab. I'm going to go on to the Data Labels sheet. Charting experts have an interesting take on data labels. Select the chart. Go to the Layout ribbon, and we want to add data labels to this chart. Open the Data Labels dropdown. We have choices to add labels to the center, that's right in the middle of each chart. The inside end, that would be right at the top of each column, but inside the blue. Inside base would be at the bottom of each column. Or my favorite, outside end. Choose outside end. Excel adds data labels to the top of each column. Now, a lot of people say there's no reason to have redundancy. If you're going to add data labels to the column, you no longer need the numbers along the left axis. If we choose Axes, Primary Vertical Axis, and then None, you'll save all the ink on the left-hand side and create a chart where everyone knows the exact value of each column. Now, you can go a long way with the built-in choices, but sometimes you're just going to have to go beyond that. Let's go on to the next worksheet for Format Series. Select the chart. If you need to reach the Format dialog box for any particular element, there are 4 different ways to access that. If you're comfortable with the built-in drop-downs, open any of them. You can choose the More option at the bottom to reach the Format dialog box. Depending on which element you're formatting, there can be anywhere from 2 to 7 items along the left-hand side, and within each category, there'll be many more settings that you can create. Now, if you remember on the grid lines drop-down, we had 5 choices. By going to the Format dialog box, you have access to the full range of changes that you can make to each element. Now, the one problem with this method of using the More option is that the most important element is missing from the ribbon. There is no option for the series. If we want to change the color of each series, we need to format the series, and there is no built-in drop-down for series. We have a couple of options. The first option is to actually click on one of the series. So if I click on the blue columns, I've now selected the series. Sometimes, though, you have data on a chart where the first series is so small you can't see it at all. If it's not possible to click on the series, you then have to go to the current selection group. Now, this is on the left-hand side of the Layout ribbon and on the same spot, the left-hand side of the Format ribbon. There's a drop-down at the top of that group that lists most of the items that you can format. From this group, we can choose Series Central, and you see that I've selected the red columns. Once I've selected the item, I now have 3 choices to reach the Format dialog box. The Control-1 shortcut key is usually the shortcut to format cells, and it turns out that it's the shortcut to reach the Format box for this element. You can also select an item and get to the Format dialog box in one command by right-clicking and choosing the Format option from the bottom of the menu. Finally, the other option, after choosing an item from the current selection, use the Format Selection button. This button is in both the Layout tab and the Format tab of the ribbon. Now there's a few things that the Format dialog box won't cover at all. And for those things, you're going to have to head back to the Home ribbon. Let me choose some text in this chart, perhaps the numbers along the left-hand side. We can now go to the Home ribbon and use any of the formatting commands there to format the text in the selection. For example, if I want to change these numbers to blue, I have a whole palette of different blues to choose from. In fact, I'm not just limited to the built-in colors. I can choose more colors and choose from any of the 16 million colors available. Now let's move on to the next sheet, the Home Formatting ribbon. Now again, if you'd like to stop the user interface, you can experiment with some of the other formatting you can do. I want to show you something really amazing though. If you remember word art from Excel 2003, it's possible to take any text in a chart and make word art out of it. I'll choose the labels along the bottom of the chart. On the Format tab of the ribbon, we have Word Art Styles and Word Art Effects. The effects that are available from the Word Art dropdown include shadow, reflection, glow. Unfortunately, you're not able to use transform, which is the classic Word Art effect, but it's pretty amazing that you can take any chart and jazz it up using Word Art. Now let's move on to gradients and we'll look at the other formatting that you can do on the Format tab. Let's click on the chart. Select an element of the chart, such as the red columns. On the Format tab, there's two very important drop-downs. The first one is Shape Fill. Shape Fill will allow you to change the color of any rectangular shape. If I don't want this series to be red, because red usually indicates a monetary loss, I can choose some other color that looks good. Now, Shape Fill is used for any rectangular areas. An interesting rectangular area is the plot area. That's the white space behind your chart. I'm going to click inside of the chart, but not on a grid line and not on a column. If you're unsure, you can always use the Current Selection dropdown to choose Plot Area. Now, the obvious settings within Shape Fill are to change the plot area to a different color. But the interesting settings are down at the bottom. Let's take a look at the gradient setting. I'm actually going to bypass all the built-in settings and go straight to More Gradients. In the Format dialog box, I'll choose Gradient Fill and one of the presets. Click Close. I've created sort of the blue sky chart. There are over a dozen different presets and various options where you can change the gradient from top to bottom, left to right, right to left. If you're trying to create eye-catching charts in PowerPoint, using a gradient is a great way to go. Let's move on to the Image tab. Now here, instead of rectangular areas, we have lines. Choose the chart to select it and choose the red line. Instead of using Shape Fill, we now need to use Shape Outline. You can choose a different color from the colors there. There are also options at the bottom to change the weight or the dashes of the line. If you need to add your company logo as a watermark behind the chart, it's easy to do. Select the chart area, go to Shape Fill, and choose Picture from the bottom of the menu. Choose your company logo and click Insert. You'll notice that every chart that we create has a thin black border around the chart. If you want to get rid of the black border, you have to use the Shape Outline setting. Click somewhere on the chart, but make sure not to touch any other elements. In the Current Selection dropdown, we'll see the chart area is selected. Go to Shape Outline and choose No Outline. Now when you click away from the chart, your chart will appear to float above the worksheet without the border. Well, that's a wrap-up of the different ways that you can format your chart. As we go through other charting examples in this lesson, I'll show you some of the other settings available deep in the Formatting dialog box. For now, I'll close this file.